Mayor Allen, it is 6:30. So once we have a quorum of council on video, we could begin.
Thank you. Okay, due to COVID-19, council is taking the necessary steps to limit in-person meetings. As such, members of council and staff will be participating in the meeting electronically. The meeting is being live streamed. Residents can watch the meeting live online by looking at www.springwater.ca/live. They can listen to the meeting live from a telephone by calling 647-558-0588 and using the ID 831-2978-1547 and then the pound sign. For those that you can do this during the meeting, and for those who are unable to live stream can look at the meeting at their convenience by watching the video on the township's YouTube channel, which is accessible through the agenda or the website. For question period, in order to accommodate questions, you can either submit the questions in writing or submit a request to make an oral submission of the question. Both require emailing the clerk at clerk@springwater.ca, and the details of that are on the agenda this evening. And we accept questions until 12 o'clock on the day of the meeting. All right, call the meeting to order. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Moore, that the regular meeting of the council of the Township of Springwater, May 19, 2021, come to order at 6:32 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. We have at 3.1 on the agenda, a deputation by the Severn Sound Environmental Association. And we have, one second here. I just want to make sure I have my names, question period. Minutes. I will now call upon Aisha Shiandet and Tamara Brincat to provide the presentation of the SSEA, please. Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just disclosures of pecuniary interest, please.
Thank you. I was looking at two different things and that skipped by me. Long day. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest, council? Thank you. Seeing none, I welcome the participants in the deputation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor and fellow council members. My name is Aisha Shandet. I'm the water scientist with the SSEA, and on the call as well is Tamara Brincat, the invasive species coordinator. So I will be showing a pre-recorded presentation, and then we will come back on and be available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor and fellow councillors, for the opportunity to present an update on SSEA's monitoring and stewardship activities. Be advised that you have more slides in your agenda package than what we have time to go through today, so please refer to those slides for further details if necessary. Springwater Township is an important part of the headwaters of the Severn Sound watershed. Over the years, we have worked with the township to achieve environmental improvements, such as reducing nutrient loads to the Wye River and improving habitat in stream corridors. It's critical that we continue to monitor environmental conditions, maintain improvements that have been made, and continue to invest in environmental protection in order to prevent regressing to conditions encountered when Severn Sound was listed as an area of concern. SSEA provides many services to the township, but today we'll be focusing on our monitoring and stewardship activities. We had a very successful tree distribution program for 2021 with 860 seedlings distributed in Springwater. Thank you to township staff for help in promoting the program, as well as transportation and distribution of orders. With respect to our invasive species program, we continue to host a multi-partner working group with the most recent virtual meeting on April 12th.
Sorry, I'm just aware, are you guys actually seeing the changing slides or just the static slide?
No, I was just about to comment on that. It's just the
Okay.
main slide so far.
Okay, let me just see here. I've got two screens going and that might be the issue. Okay, let's try that again.
Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, and fellow councillors for the opportunity to present an update on SSEA's monitoring and stewardship activities. Be advised that you have more slides in your agenda package than what we have time to go through today, so please refer to those slides for
My apologies. Of course, it works when you do the tech test. And okay, I'm quickly just going to change my screen settings.
Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, and fellow councillors for the opportunity to present an update on SSEA's monitoring and stewardship activities. Be advised that you have more slides in your agenda package than what we have time to go through today, so please refer to those slides for further details if necessary. Springwater Township is an important part of the headwaters of the Severn Sound watershed. Over the years, we have worked with the township to achieve environmental improvements, such as reducing nutrient loads to the Wye River and improving habitat in stream corridors. It's critical that we continue to monitor environmental conditions, maintain improvements that have been made, and continue to invest in environmental protection in order to prevent regressing to conditions encountered when Severn Sound was listed as an area of concern. SSEA provides many services to the township, but today we'll be focusing on our monitoring and stewardship activities. We had a very successful tree distribution program for 2021 with 860 seedlings distributed in Springwater. Thank you to township staff for help in promoting the program as well as transportation and distribution of orders. With respect to our invasive species program, we continue to host a multi-partner working group with the most recent virtual meeting on April 12th. We have also provided your SSEA board representative and staff a copy of the 2020 Springwater Invasive Species Report. With COVID restrictions, we have worked to adapt the education and outreach component of our programming to a virtual format, providing several learning opportunities to the public. In addition, we have launched an invasive species citizen science program this year to train and encourage volunteers to identify and detect invasive species on and around their property in a COVID-safe manner. Just a reminder that under the Protocol and Services Agreement, we operate in the Severn Sound watershed portion of the township, shown in the pink hatched area, all of which flows to Severn Sound. So when we look at the Springwater portion of the Severn Sound watershed, there's a couple of things that we're keeping an eye on. These include erosion, nutrient and sediment loading, both from urban and agricultural sources, algae growth in the Wye River in particular, and looking at just overall nutrient and sediment loading to Severn Sound as well. So you can see on the map some of our long-term surface water and groundwater monitoring sites, and I'll be talking about those results in the coming slides. So just to briefly touch on our climate monitoring, we do have a new station set up at the Midland wastewater plant, and we're looking at establishing other stations closer to Elmvale area. So you can check out our website for real-time data from that weather station and get a sense of what we're able to monitor. Looking at stream temperature, we have both long-term monitoring that we do and more intensive thermal studies that we've done in the headwaters of the Wye River. So we have two long-term sites in the headwaters. The one closest to Orr Lake has shown an increase in average summer temperature. And in terms of our intensive studies, the main purpose really is to look at or classify reaches as either warm, cool, or cold for fish habitat. And so the warm water sites can be sort of a priority for improvement through things like stream bank tree planting, and the cool and cold water sites are really the priorities for protection from things like stormwater inputs and further tree cutting. Looking at water quality, we have a long-term monitoring station where the old Hub Motel used to be on Highway 27. And looking at key indicators of human impact, we see that total phosphorus and suspended sediment has been coming down over the long term, which is good. Other indicators like nitrate and chlorides are going up, showing that there are still some management actions that are required in the area. Looking at the Wye River subwatershed more of in a spatial context, the four graphs on the bottom there show that between Orr Lake and Elmville there is deterioration in water quality, and further from Elmville down to Wye Bridge, deterioration again. To complement the water quality information that we have, we also sample stream invertebrates. So it's a really good way to indicate water and habitat quality. We have sites on the Sturgeon River and 2 sites on the Wye River. And the 2 Wye River sites are actually showing changes in the invertebrate community. We can also look at the Hilsenhoff Index, which really shows us an indicator of the level of organic pollution. And this is showing an improving trend at the Wye River sites. So switching gears now to Orr Lake, our last survey in 2015 showed that the lake was classified as moderately enriched. You can find the entire subwatershed conditions report on our website, and we will be repeating that survey this summer. So we've also been continuing to do our winter sampling and looking at dissolved oxygen in particular. So the amount of oxygen has been actually decreasing over the last 8 years. That's something we're keeping an eye on. And finally, we have partnered last year with Georgian College with a student to look at sort of reports from residents on how they like to use the water and the importance of water quality to them, and then also just their interpretation of appropriate shoreline buffers, and have sort of identified a need for some additional education on that front. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to plug some of our citizen science programs. So we have a Shore Watch and a Stream Watch program. Unfortunately, no volunteers from 2020 in Springwater Township, but we have 3 signed up for this year, which is great. You can look at the full report just to get a sense of what those monitoring programs entail on our website. And we also have an ice monitoring, which we do have a volunteer from Orr Lake, and new for this year is invasive species spotters. So again, lots more information on our website. Looking at our groundwater monitoring, we have a monitoring well just south of Hillsdale on Ingramside Road, sharing the boundary with Ormodonte. And this is a shallow well that we measure water levels and also annual chemistry trends. So really can look at the impact of land uses on the local aquifer. So we're seeing that water quality is pretty stable in this well, with a decrease actually in the amount of fluoride and phosphorus. Sodium concentrations have also been well below the drinking water standard. We do have a well that's being considered as a new monitoring well on Floss Road 10, and we'll keep the township informed as that progresses. So it's important for us to be able to communicate to the township how our monitoring and stewardship activities can support municipal decision making. So I won't go through this whole list, but some examples just to note. So looking at our stream temperature, for example, and looking at how we can identify those more sensitive reaches of the Wye River and its tributaries and protect those from either land use change or even just in terms of timing and measures that can be taken with road and construction works. Other opportunities include incorporating some of these findings into official plans, for example, or natural asset valuations. So just to summarize, we're using multiple lines of evidence to look at how tributaries and lakes are doing in terms of water and habitat quality. And we do feel there are some steps that can be taken to improve habitat and water quality conditions. Some of the improvements that should be protected, including reductions in phosphorus where that has occurred, and emerging issues that can be addressed, such as chloride, and maybe looking at how road salt is being used across the township. So monitoring data can be used to support some of the municipal decision-making processes and guide stewardship priorities to help meet some of these habitat and water quality targets. So I'll wrap up and say thank you for the ongoing support from the township. We're here to work with you on your environmental needs and goals, and we're always available if you need to reach out. So I'll wrap up and take any questions.
Thank you, Aisha and Tamara. How can you communicate your recommendations to us so that we can take them to the next step or take action on them? You've got this presentation and summaries, but more detail with respect to the recommendations and potential remediations. Do you would it be possible to get that sort of a letter from the SSEA pertaining to your studies?
Absolutely. Thank you to your worship, Mayor Allen. I think that's a kind of a good way to move forward. Some of these results are relatively new, and so I think we can sort of take this and make a summary document that we can send out to the township and to council. To
Excellent.
sort of provide a summary on that.
Well, thank you again for the presentation, councillors. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mary Allen. Thank you, Asia, for coming tonight for the presentation. And thank you for the work that you're doing, and keep up the good work too. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? It's good. These interim reports are very helpful. So thank you for doing that, and we look forward to the follow-up and recommendations communication from you. So I don't see any other cards for now, so we'll look forward to that follow-up letter, and thank you again, ladies.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity. Take care.
Okay, can I have a mover and seconder to receive the delegation, please? Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Cabral, that the delegation from the Severn Sound Environmental Association providing an update on their projects and programs be received. All those in favor? It is carried. Thank you. So I talked about question period before. So Clerk Ainsworth, have there been any submissions received?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. There has been one submission received, as said to council earlier this afternoon. The submission is from Don Bradley of Georgian Chevrolet, and it's regarding item 7.8 on the agenda. And I'll read his comments. I just read through the subject Springwater agenda item with great interest and some concern. As a Springwater taxpayer, resident, and retired General Motors of Canada employee and current employee of Georgian Chevrolet, I'm very familiar with the enterprise corporate strategies after having dealt with them for 12 years as a regional daily rental manager for GM Canada prior to retirement. Enterprise is extremely good at churning out data from their central office in St. Louis, Missouri, because they are the largest rental and remarketing company in the world. However, it's their data. Other leasing companies and OEMs do very much the same thing. It's called life cycle costing, to put a positive sales spin on the product they are selling. Reality and market changes over a 5 or 10 year period can be very much different. What happens in a leasing situation is simply a complete withdrawal from any equity in an asset. Essentially, one is looking at a long-term rental. Sure, you are cycling through newer and fresher vehicles, but that could be done internally, and you would actually have assets on the books to manage down the road. If the management of these assets is an issue, then I guess it's an easy call to let an outside company manage those assets, charge you a lease fee based on the vehicle residual values, market interest rates, mileages, vehicle return condition and term, and then benefit from the sales of those assets. I don't think I have to tell you who's actually making all of the money in this relationship. He lists his concerns as one, locking into a long-term leasing relationship with a non-local company. 2, not offering any local business, lease companies or auto dealers an opportunity to bid through the procurement process. 3, possible loss of municipal jobs that may be associated with township fleet management that now become redundant. 4, expertise of the contracted lease company based in the US to assess the local upfitting requirements for specialty vehicles. 5, communication with the lease company when potential issues or concerns arise with the product or the lease contract. 6, assessing the actual needs of the local fleet, as enterprise will likely want to push vehicles that are best for them. And 7, page 7 of the fleet management replacement program, and in the paragraph referring to vehicle acquisition, the sentence reads, enterprise sources vehicles directly from the manufacturer and can obtain factory order pricing, which yields the net price of each vehicle. The fact is that they do have access to manufacturer pricing, but are not allowed to order vehicles directly from the manufacturer, at least not GMC. Any orders placed on behalf of enterprise must be placed via a franchised dealer and the delivery price negotiated with that dealer. The second sentence regarding buying power is also misleading because most OEMs subsidize government vehicle purchases at a higher incentive level per vehicle than enterprise can achieve on their own. How would I know this? On a recent enterprise municipal purchase order placed through Georgian Chevrolet, enterprise's competitive assistance was $1,500 less than the GM government assistance on that specific vehicle model.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Ainsworth, and thank you, Mr. Bradley, for that correspondence. We certainly have reviewed it, and it'll be discussed as part of reviewing 7.8 when we get to that. Thank you. Moving on to 5.1, adoption of minutes of council. Can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ma. We have 4 items. Any comments with respect to these? Okay, move that the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. A special meeting of council, April 26, 2021. Public meeting of April 26, 2021. Special meeting of council, May 5th, 2021, and the regular meeting of council of May 5th, 2021. All those in favor? That is carried. There are no minutes of boards or committees and organizations, so we're moving on to 6.1. Proposal of LED sign in Elmville by Elmville District Lions Club. Can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please? Councillor Cabral and Councillor Ritchie. So I'll start by going to Councillor Cabral, give us an overview of this, and then I'll go to CEO Schmidt because I think he's been involved in discussions as well. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a bit of an update here. I was in a conversation with Lions Club members, and through dialogue with them, really, they proposed providing the Maple Syrup Festival in conjunction with them funding in order to put up a complete digitized sign on County Road 27 when you're coming northbound into Elmvale. So basically sprucing up that sign and putting in a digitized sign. The issue was that, they were seeking approval so that they could move forward with it. They were going to pay for it, maintain it, and run it. They did have a bit of a deadline as far as their financial year end is concerned, hence the reason why it's on tonight's agenda. They wanted to try and ensure that if they moved forward, they would be able to. If not, I guess they would basically put those funds towards another project, which might not be necessarily of the same benefit to the community. I have had conversation with them and also conversation with CAO Schmidt, and I'd like to kind of turn it over to CAO Schmidt because I believe there's been some development that will allow this to move forward.
Thank you, CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor Cabral. So yes, as recent as within about the last 2 hours, I've had a conversation with representatives from the Elmville Lions Club. So to Councillor Cabral's point, we are looking to have or entertain some type of a partnership with them on this, and so they're open to having a further discussion with respect to this sign. They I guess weren't staff are in the process of developing a digital sign program, and to be honest with you, we were planning on having a report on tonight's agenda. However, I made the decision not to put it on the agenda just due to the fact that there's still a number or a few associations like the Rec Advisory Committee, like the Community Rec Associations, and now obviously the Lions Club, as well as the Maple Syrup Committee. We want to make sure that we meet with those individuals and have a conversation and make sure that we're all on the same page here. So my recommendation to council would be is to refer this back to staff tonight and to authorize staff as well as Councillor Cabral to further discuss this with the Elmville Lions Club, with the intent of coming back hopefully to the June 2nd meeting with further consideration for council. I know in my discussion with the Lions Club, they had mentioned their year end is kind of mid-June or end of June. There wasn't exactly a firm date there. So I think we have a little bit of time, but not a lot of time. So we are looking to reach out to them to have that meeting within the next week or so. And then with the intent of coming back to council with hopefully an agreement that all of us can benefit from. So.
Okay, well, Clerk Ainsworth crafts the amendment. Any further discussion on this, council? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's very generous of the Lions Club to come forward. I would be happy to support it. If there's going to be a delay with the meetings that the CAO and Councillor Cabell are having with the Lions Club, is there any way we could make sure we indicate that we're in support of this in the recommendation, so they know before they do something else with their money at year end that we're happy to take advantage of their offer?
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hannah. Absolutely. I think, you know, if council, I guess if they recommend further to what I've provided, if there was a further amendment to that to suggest that council is supportive of this, that may assist as well. Again, the intent is to try to be back in front of council before their deadline, which would be, again, if it's June 15th, then we'll be aiming to be back at the next council meeting on June 2nd with something for council's consideration.
A follow-up, Councillor Hannah?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I think if it would assist staff, I'd be happy to make a motion to the effect that council is in supportive of the Lions Club offer.
Okay, Councillor Clerk Ainsworth, is that part of so that's the amendment that we're talking about then?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The first motion I drafted was a referral to staff, which would not include approval of a partnership in principle. If that's the direction that council would like to go, then I would suggest an amendment to the main motion. And I've drafted that the motion now before council be amended as follows. Add and that council authorize a partnership with the Lions Club for digital signage in principle, and that staff, my apologies. And that staff have further discussions with the Lions Club regarding the possible partnership and report back to council at a subsequent meeting.
So the way that is worded is that we're supportive of a possible partnership, but we're not necessarily approving that this evening. Is that the way I interpret? Is that correct interpretation?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Yes, it's correct. I've included the wording in principle in the motion.
Right. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And through you to CEO Schmidt, when this comes back to council, will there be the draft policy? Because I do know that this is probably the, let's say, 4th or 5th time that a community group has come forward wanting to provide funding with the municipality. I believe that the Midhearts Recreation Advisory Committee has done so, and the Menacing Advisory Committee and the Elmville Maple Syrup Committee. So we have had offers like this before, but it's always come down to control of that. So would that level of control be part of the policy at the same time?
I'll direct that to CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the intent is to bring forward the draft policy as well, which is will be discussed with RAC as well as the CRAs and the Lions Club as well as the Maple Syrup Committee. So we want to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page and understands what the intent of this is, and also try to ensure that we are, again, communicating to the extent we can for all individuals and all associations. Again, that's part and parcel of some of the conversation we've had with the Lions Club, is just making sure that, you know, if they're willing to partner, meaning that, which means either they go ahead with their project, and or if they provide a cash donation, then obviously they would want to have some kind of recognition and or some kind of way to provide messaging to the community, whether it be for some of their events and or if they're seeking volunteers or that kind of stuff, which again, I think we still need to communicate with staff, but I don't see that as a showstopper, to be quite honest with you. So.
Councillor Cabral?
Just muted myself, sorry. Thank you, Marilyn. Just so everybody has a bit of a sense on, this is a sign that's already pre-existing, that's been there for, well, probably I'm going to just say it's been there before Springwater was Springwater. So I think the important thing here is, since the Lions Club we're wanting to move forward to update the sign, like currently and presently, we don't do anything with that sign. The messages are posted by the volunteers. The sign is upkept by the volunteers. The Horticultural Society tends to the flowers there. The Maple Syrup Festival put up the sign. What they wanted to do was digitize it by putting up a digitized sign. So I think the key here is being sensitive, I guess, you know, whether the Lions Club pays for it and township operates it, or whether the Lions Club pays for it, installs it, and has township's blessing to do so, or whether township puts in a more robust sign and still gets the donation. I think we have to be sensitive to the groups that are already involved in there, as well as the residents of Elmvale, in the sense that they view that more or less as a community sign. It's been there for so long. So that's kind of why I would like to see us move forward and basically grant approval contingent on further dialogue, as CAO Schmidt has advised. And also he was kind enough to include me in that dialogue. So I'm hoping we can move forward that way, but I just wanted to kind of stress the fact that I think we are in a position where we need to be sensitive to these particular groups. They do a lot of community work for us and a lot of benefit to the township, so that we're sensitive to what they would like to use the sign for as well. So I just wanted to add that extra part for those who may not be familiar with this particular sign.
Yeah, no, I take your point to Councillor Cabral, but each community and their signs that they want to have the community members and residents who have the same interests. So, you know, we're sort of going to the next level with respect to this type of communication in the different communities. So we want to make sure it's uniform, consistent, and satisfactory to the township as to the policy of how this rolls out. So, you know, we're not approving this tonight, as I just clarified, and we do appreciate the offer, but this is going to be coming back to after more discussion and meetings to roll out a possible plan for this that would be used as a template for the other communities. Councillor Maud Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a question. I think it goes along with Deputy Mayor. Because I know with all the other committees, we talked about the LED sign, for example, Minnesing, and we were going to purchase it ourselves, or they were. And then the township way back and then in their years talked about putting signs everywhere. And make a long story short, then the township would have control on who puts what up there, and the volunteers / committees would be secondary. Would this sort of be the same way? Also, who owns that sign now? Does the Maple Syrup Festival own it now, or does the township own the sign now? Because it's on township property, but on the county road.
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Maud Chapman. So it's my understanding that the property is township owned, but the sign, I believe, is the property of the Maple Syrup Committee. So that's my understanding. And again, to your point about Minnesing and other communities coming forward to the township, the intent is that there will be a draft, there is a draft digital sign policy that staff have developed, and we want to share that again with the CRAs and the RAC, Recreation Advisory Committee, as well as I mentioned in Elmville, specifically the Lions Club and the Maple Syrup Festival, or Maple Syrup Committee, sorry. So, you know, the intent, I think, to Mayor Allen's comments, we do want to make sure that messaging is consistent across the communities in all of Springwater, and that is part and parcel of what we're trying to achieve here. But at the same time, I think, you know, in the discussion that I had with the Lions Club, they want to make sure that they still have some of their, you know, community messaging, whether it be, again, whether they're doing raffle draws or car draws, and to the extent that there's other events happening, not necessarily birthdays per se, but again, other events that may be happening in the community that are community based. And, you know, whether or not it's also some of our minor associations where they might be having tournaments or events, is there an opportunity for them to also use the messaging? And again, I think that would be something that the township will want to work with those different associations and try to accommodate to the best that we can. Obviously, there is going to be some parameters put in place, and so there's likely going to be some messaging that may not fit in with what the township's trying to achieve here. And then again, there may be some other messaging that we can accommodate. So, but to the deputy mayor's comment, I don't like to use the word control, but it is somewhat controlling the messages that are going out to the community. And again, it's more or less making sure there's a consistent message going out to our residents, whether it be in Elmville, whether it be in Midhearts, whether it be in Ant Mills or Minnesing or wherever the case may be. But again, I think, you know, again, subject to further discussion with staff and to the different associations, is how can we still provide a little bit of that community flavor, if you will, within those specific settlement areas, that still provides a little bit more, again, of that. Okay, this is Elmville based. You know, what kind of messaging can we have specific for Elmville versus, you know, maybe something for Midhurst or something else like that. So again, we're still in the preliminary stages of this, but again, the thought is not necessarily to walk the path of, okay, there's a garage sale this weekend, or there's a you know, at so-and-so's residence end, or there's someone's birthday. We're not looking at it from that perspective, and so we may get some pushback on that. But that's really not the intent of what we're trying to do here. It is trying to focus on community messaging, and again, partnering with some of those associations to provide for some of their events that are coming up and some of their messaging to the extent possible.
Okay, I have Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Mott Chapman, and then Councillor Cabral.
Oh, thank you. My comment was just that on top of the CRAs, the SatFest and the Lions Clubs at Elmville BIA, and Councillor Cabral may be able to elaborate on that, but I believe that Elmville BIA was looking into a water feature and electronic sign as well in Elmville. So if they could be involved in the conversation so that we're not duplicating wheel, would be great.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And I think this opportunity is a great opportunity, and especially if it's another committee or a club who wants to help. And I think LED signs throughout the township would spruce the township up. And I just think everywhere to be worthwhile and eventually down the road. So this might be a good start. And I do support it. I just needed to know what CO Smith had to say. Thank you.
Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just to Deputy Mayor Coughlin's point through you, there has been at the BIA meetings, and my understanding was that they'd also had some dialogue with staff as well. They are focused on a digital sign at the parquet, which so that's where they want to focus their attention. And I did have conversation with CAO Schmidt specific to that to see if he was aware that that's kind of the route that they were trying to take. But same deal here is, well, you know, how many signs do we need? I don't have a problem with policy. Obviously, policy is good. I just want to make sure that we're sensitive to the groups that are involved in this particular situation, because it is a pre-existing sign through the Maple Syrup Festival. And if I could put a different spin on this, I think what we're really talking about here is the Maple Syrup Festival and the Lions Club were looking to digitize a sign, and it just so happens that ends up being the same spot that staff were looking to also utilize for a digital sign. So if staff had been looking to do a digital sign over on County Road 92, then this might not have been the issue that it became. But I also wanted to get some clarity from CAO Schmidt, and I apologize because I did press this because I was of the opinion that they needed to have an answer before the end of May. I was led to believe that that was their budget. So maybe I was misinformed. I just want some clarity on that.
CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Cabral. So Councillor Cabral, in the conversation I had today, a date of June, mid-June and or the end of June was what was provided to me. So, you know, what we'll do though is I've already reached out to staff to see if they can reach out to the Elmville representative, Elmville Lions Club representative, to book a meeting hopefully for next week, so that you know, we could try to fit it in should we need to, and make sure that we try to meet the deadlines if it is the end of May. Again, we can try to work that in as best we can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Ainsworth, please read the motion then, please. Or the
Thank you.
amendment.
Yes, so the amendment would read that the motion now before council be amended as follows. Add, and that council authorize a partnership with the Lions Club for digital signage in principle, and that staff be directed to have further discussions with the Lions Club regarding the possible partnership and report back at a subsequent meeting. And that would need to be moved and seconded.
Councillor Cabral and Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Do we need to go to a main motion or is that it?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. We would need to have a vote on the main motion as amended.
And I think we have mover and seconder for that already. Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Good, thank you. Positive stuff. Moving on to item 7, action reports. We have 7.2 through 7.8. Presumably we're pulling 7.8. Any other questions or desires to pull other items? Councillor Cabral?
Yes, Mayor Allen, could we pull 7.3?
7.3. Others?
I think we might want to pull 7.2 as well.
7.2, 7.3, and 7.8. Okay, can I have a mover and seconder to accept the others, please? Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Ma, that action items 7.2 through 7.8 be received and that the recommendations contained therein be approved. 7.2, 7.3, Vespra 7.4, Vespra Valley Phase 3 authorization for municipal easement. 7.5.
Sorry, Mayor Allen, I have to interrupt you. I apologize, but 7.2 I asked to be pulled.
Yes, I go through them and then I say with the exception of 7.2.
Okay, I apologize.
That's a normal process, Councillor Cabral. Thank you. 7.4, I said 7.5, Cameron Estates Phase 1 and 2 reduction of securities. 7.6, Stone Manor Woods security summary of all phases. 7.7, ZB 2021-003 and SP 2021-001 White Owl Properties Limited, with the exception of 7.2, proposed OPP detachment board. 7.3, RFP 2021-06 PW articulated front end loader, and 7.8 fleet management replacement program. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, in order of numerical order, 7.2, proposed OPP detachment board. Mover and seconder to get this on the floor. Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ma. Comment, Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm just wondering about the progress of this particular document moving forward. I know that there's a motion there specific to, I believe it's Clearview. I'm just trying to bring it up now, so I apologize.
Clearview has passed a motion.
Correct. That's it.
Wasaga is meeting within the next week to review.
Right. I guess the part based on the proposed OPP detachment board for Huronia West, I guess the comment I'd like to make with respect to this is that I did go online and I had a look at a number of other similar Schedule 10 contracts. And what I find here is, and no offense to staff in any way, shape, or form, is with respect to the composition of R3 seats at that particular table, I believe that it should be members of council that sit on it. I couldn't find any other police services board that had a member of the municipal staff that sat on the board. So I'm not in favor of that. I believe it should be 2 council members. We're the elected representatives. So that's kind of my feelings on that. And I'm certainly open for discussion. However, I do want to point out that I was unable to find a police services board that had on it a member of municipal staff. City of Orillia, 2 council members. Midland, 2 council members. Collingwood, 2 council members. Norfolk County Police Services Board, 2 council members. Nottawasaga Police Services Board, 2 council members. Town of Prescott, 2 council members. And I stopped there because most of the major police services boards in Ontario, given Barrie, the City of Toronto, Haldimand, Norfolk, all of them, it's the same. They're elected officials that sit on the board and appointees from the provincial government. And of course, in this particular case, we may appoint a citizen of the town of the township. So that's my only concern. What the other municipalities do with their 3 seats, that's entirely up to them. I don't think we necessarily have to follow suit with them, but those are my thoughts. And the reasoning for that is we are the elected representatives. I don't see this as a situation where the municipal employee should be sitting on the police services board. So that's my feelings on it. So I can't support this if that's how it's going to go forward.
Okay. All right. Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. I have to agree with Councillor Cabral, and I would also, while we're not selecting people tonight, I would suggest that he would be an excellent candidate to be on that committee.
Okay, CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just further to the comments from Councillor Cabral and Councillor Hanna. So Councillor Hanna is correct. Tonight we're not voting on the actual individuals who would be on the board. It's just simply the composition. So to be quite honest with you, that conversation, Councillor Cabral came up and between the 3 CAOs, and we were, to be honest with you, a little uncomfortable potentially being elected or being appointed to this board. To your point, we are staff, and usually staff do not participate as voting members on a board. So we would be happy to support and be behind the scenes and provide the support, but to be on the board, that's not what I was recommending. And we're not recommending anybody at this point. It's just simply the composition is what we're looking at. 2 municipal representatives specifically from each municipality, 1 municipal or 1 community representative, as well as the provincial appointees. And again, the composition is has to have 20% from the community and 20% from the provincial appointees. Beyond that, it's really the municipal representation. So Tonight, we're just simply trying to get across, are you agreeable to the 12 member composition? And if you are, then the three of us CAOs can get together and provide a submission to the ministry by the deadline of June 7th. And then further to that, there will be discussion about who's to be appointed on the committee, as well as remuneration, and all those things will come and follow suit once we get direction from the ministry.
Okay, I'll go to Clerk Ainsworth and then Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And just to follow up on what the CAO mentioned, it is council who will be appointing the township's representatives. So it will be up to council whether it is 2 members of council, 1 member of staff, 1 member of council. So just because it states that staff could potentially be a member, it doesn't mean that council has to appoint a member of staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Follow up.
Yep, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And if it sounds a bit confused, I can only go by the resolution that was put before me, and I look at the 3rd line where it says the proposed board composition is to be the mayor and CAO from each municipality and 3 community appointees and 3 provincial appointees for a total of 12 members. I'm happy with the 12, but when I look at this and it comes up as their resolution, I believe, Clearview Township Council resolution dated May the 10th, that's what it says. So if that's what it says, I can only make the assumption that that's what they're anticipating doing moving forward. And unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to support that for our council.
Okay,
So,
but as we stated, we're not determining that tonight for our situation. So CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, just to clarify, Councillor Cabral, again, the recommendation that staff have put forward, township staff have put forward, does not include that. We did not include that in part of our recommendation tonight. That is in Clearview's, and to your point before, if that's the route they want to take, then by all means. But that's not what we're recommending tonight in our recommendation before council. It's simply the 12 members, and that it's 1 board. Again, council can appoint when the time comes as to who the representatives will be on this board. So just again to clarify.
Okay, so we have a mover and seconder, and the motion is that the report from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding the proposed OPP Detachment Board of Huronia West dated May 19, 2021 be received, and that council support the creation of a single OPP Detachment Board to serve the OPP Huronia West Detachment Catchment Area, and further that council approve a 12-member OPP Detachment Board consisting of 2 municipal representatives from each municipality, 1 community representative from each municipality, and 3 provincial appointees, and that the Chief Administrative Officer be advised to work with the municipalities of Clearview and Wasaga Beach on the proposal that is to be submitted to the OPP on the proposed composition of the board by June 7, 2021 deadline. All those in favor? That is carried. Next is 7.3, which is the articulated front end loader. Mover and seconder to get this on the floor. Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ma. Councillor Cabral, you had comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. With this particular one, when I was reading it, and it seems to me that since we're going to be talking about fleet management later on, I'd just like to point out that we appropriated the funds for this, we bought this, and now we're going to get another one, and we've got $62,000 coming back to us. If it had been a leased vehicle, wouldn't be seeing that money. I'm just going to put that out there right now. But what I do want to ask, and maybe CAO Schmidt or Financial Director Radigan might be able to shed some light on this. When we do a capital budget and we put in X number of dollars into that capital budget, and I'm looking in here and it looks like we had budgeted $400,000. If I'm reading it correctly. And, you know, it's pretty good deal because it looks like we're going to be getting it for, well, not for, but we're going to be paying $249,000. I'm not sure whether this $62,000 has already been taken into account or if the $249,000 is what we will be paying, and then we get another $62,000 back. But it looks to me kind of like double dipping. Like we provided a budget for an item, and then when it's done, there's $62,000 coming back. And I'm wondering if the $62,000 shouldn't be going into general reserves rather than going back into public works. So I just want some clarity on that particular process and whether I'm right or wrong, because it looks like we got a fair chunk of change left over already from that $400,000. So those are my questions.
Before I go to Director Radigan, I don't Enterprise wouldn't be handling this sort of a vehicle. It's more the fleet vehicle, so they wouldn't.
No,
they wouldn't
no.
handle this. So Director Radigan.
No, I'm just comparing it lease and buying, Mayor Allen. That's all. I'm not bringing Enterprise necessarily into this.
Director Radigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral. I'll start, and then potentially with CEO Smith's background and experience, he may be able to further provide details. But based on best practice and even common practice, you would see most municipalities would budget for an item based on the outlying cash outlay. And most municipalities don't necessarily budget for a trade-in value because that may not be known at the time. And so ultimately what you're looking at for good accounting and auditing practices as well, you'd be seeing funds coming out of the reserve. And then for the trade-in, you'd be seeing funds going into the reserve as a result. So it's not necessarily double dipping. We'd only pull out what we need to fund the actual purchase, and the remaining would stay in the reserve to fund future capital acquisitions. And a trade-in or a sale would then in turn result in net proceeds, which would then go into the reserve as well.
Okay. Anything further on that, CEO Schmidt, before I go to Councillor Ritchie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just further to Director Radigan's comments. So in my experience with a municipality, not to be named, but just south of us, when I started there in 2005, they actually were budgeting as a funding source the trade-in value. And the challenge with that is to Director Radigan's point, you budget $5 grand or 10 grand and you only get $2 grand. Well, now you got to find funds to support the rest of the acquisition. So hence, we don't budget for the trade-in value because we never know what that value is going to be. And just further to the comment of allocating those trade-in funds, the intent of allocating those funds back to the Public Works Capital Reserve is to assist for the future replacement of assets. So, you know, and even with the existing, the 400,000 that we had budgeted for, I don't recall exactly the funding source, but I think it was around maybe half coming from a reserve and the rest coming from taxation, or 300,000 from reserve and 100,000 from taxation. The idea would be is that we would only pull what we need out of the reserve, so we would be able to utilize the surplus, if you will, from that acquisition again to further support future replacements of our infrastructure. As we've stated before, time and time again, you know, our assets do need to be replaced on a timely basis. And the fact of the matter is that from a tax-based perspective, we still don't have enough funds set aside on an annual basis to actually replace all of our assets should we need to. Not that we would ever have to do that on an annual on a one-time basis. But again, that's the intent, is to try to help us from an asset management perspective to have funds set aside so that when assets need to be replaced, we don't have to have a hit to the bottom line and increased taxes. We can use these reserve funds to assist and minimize the impact to existing taxpayers.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through to if our manager of operations, Scott Haw, is on the line there. To my knowledge, I believe we have, and Jeff might know too, I believe we have 2 loaders like this, do we not?
Manager Haw.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Ritchie. Yes, we do have 2 cat loaders. One's a 2009 and one's a 2011.
Okay, through you, Mayor, to Scott, the 2011, then, how many hours is on it? Roughly. I won't hold you to that.
Go ahead.
Off the top of my head, I'd probably say around the 5,000 hour mark.
Mayor Allen, please. The reason why I'm mentioning this is, and if we're going to get, if we've budgeted for 400,000 and this machine is 240 and we get 60 back, it's like there's enough money there in the trade-in values and the amount of money left to trade it in as well too, and have 2 new loaders all at once. And correct me there in my math if we can do that. But may I also add too, these loaders are Caterpillar, and these are Cadillacs. These are good quality loaders that we purchased a few years ago, and we've given them good maintenance. So that's probably why we're getting good trade-in value. And again, we own them and we're getting that. So I think that's an area of trading in, keeping up good, decent equipment for our staff. And these loaders are used every day. It doesn't matter if it's in the winter loading trucks or out on the roads. These are used every day. And I think it might be worth, I would be very supportive if we could crunch the numbers and trade both of them in and have 2 new loaders and do it all in one swoop. That might be worth something thinking moving forward. I welcome any comments on that.
Any comments from Manager Haw or CAO Schmidt or Director Radigan on that? Manager Haw, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Ritchie. I'll leave the financials, I guess, to Director Radigan, but availability might be an issue this year of getting 2 loaders. There's an issue with getting certain electronic components, so it may not be feasible, but I guess if the if Director Radigan has more to add about financials, then we could entertain maybe.
When's the other loader scheduled to be replaced?
I believe next year.
Director Radigan?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Councillor Ritchie. It is something that we can definitely further look into as a result of the savings on this one. It is in the 10-year capital to be replaced for next year. And as a result, the funds would be in the reserve, whether it's replaced this year or next year. I'm not sure about timing wise, if price has already gone up or not. That's something that I believe we would need to further look into. But I'm not positive if as a result of COVID prices have gone up or if it is difficult to actually receive.
We'll go to CAO Schmidt, then follow on by Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing that I would maybe caution is that you know, the original procurement document went out as one item, and so that's what was quoted on. And so in order to be fair and competitive to the market, I would suggest we would have to go back out to the market with another tender. We couldn't just go to this supplier and seek that pricing. I think we would have to be fair to everybody and go out again and allow for fair competition.
It's a good point. Councillor Ma, then Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I was just going to ask that. I would think that we'd have to go back to tender for 2. So CO Smith said what I wanted to hear.
Okay, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'll make the comment that I would support what Councillor Ritchie's brought up. I think maybe it might be worthwhile for staff to reach out. I mean, when they're doing an RFP, they have to reach out and find out what the cost of things are to get an idea of what kind of coin to be asking for an RFP. So I think that might be worthwhile looking at. However, my question was not actually answered. And I have to look back at the document, and I hope council will indulge me on this. But when I read it here, it says the approved 2021 capital budget includes funds to replace an existing 2009 articulated front end loader, yard one, project number in the amount of $400,000. Okay, so that's the amount we were prepared to spend on it. My question was also whether the $249,000 was inclusive of the $62,000 rebate that we're going to be getting for it, or was that on top of it? So I guess at the end of the day, did the new one cost us just over $300,000, or did it actually cost us $190,000? That's kind of what I needed to know on that one. But I'd be more than happy to support going forward with Councillor Ritchie brought up.
Okay, Director Radigan, but we have to take into consideration that we're in the middle of a tender process here. So CEO Schmidt, you can comment on the ability to adjust that or not at this time. Director Radigan, the numbers?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Allen. Councillor Cabral, you are correct. The price does not currently include the $62,000 for the trade-in. So you would look at it as it's the $260 some odd thousand for the actual purchase, less the $62,150 for the trade-in.
Thank you.
That's what I thought. Now, as far as proceeding with this tender, CEO Schmidt, we couldn't turn around and say, well, now we're looking for two rather than one because of this tender process. Is that correct?
To be fair, Mr. Mayor, I think we are in a binding contract with this successful bidder. So we need to be careful. And so you either, you have a recommendation in front of you tonight to approve. And if you do not approve this, then we need to come up with a reason why we're not going to approve it. And the fact of the matter is, if it's just simply because of what we discussed here tonight, I'm not sure that that's appropriate. My comment would be is that you should consider what's before you tonight, and should council wish to further consider what Councillor Ritchie has suggested, that we go out with a separate procurement document to try to achieve that same result.
Clerk Ainsworth and Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And if that is the direction that council would like to go, it could be simply an amendment to this motion, adding the direction for staff to release a document seeking a second unit. And that would not interrupt the approval of this unit tonight.
Councillor Ritchie and then Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Mayor Allen, I think going forward, honor the deal we have now on the books. But the end of the year's not up yet. We could still go forward with another quote in the fall or whenever, and keep in mind too that it took a year to get this. So if we do it now, then next year we'll have that. That's another year under its belt, another 1,000 hours maybe. That's now up to 6,000. So now it's getting ready, almost ready to trade in. So I'm just kind of thinking a little ahead of time that we could do that. But how we follow through with that is up to make sure we follow the policies, the procedures appropriately. But I would support going back out when the time is right, and at least get our name on the books. And prices are going up, and get our name on the books. And next year we'll have another new one. And those are two brand new loaders that are used every day, and that would look after Public Works in a big way, I think.
Okay, so we can go ahead with this motion. I don't know if we need a motion to get staff rather than just direction, as we've discussed, to start investigating about the same sort of a deal for the other loader. Councillor Ritchie?
I think just by talking it up and throwing it out there, I think maybe gives staff the idea that let's get this one passed, but let's work towards doing another one. and moving forward. And I think just from the good discussion that we've had, that there would be support there to do that.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Colin, did you have a comment? No?
No, if there's no amendment, I don't have a comment.
Yeah. Okay, so we've read it. We've got a mover and seconder. The motion is that the report from the operations technician regarding 2021-06 PW articulated front end loader RFP dated May 19, 2021 be received, and that the submission from Brandt Tractor Limited for a new 2021 John Deere 524P articulated front end loader in the amount of $249,210.24, including non-rebatable HST, be approved, and that the current 930H unit number 24 be traded in as part of this tender once the new unit is received, and that the trade-in value of $62,150 be allocated to the Public Works Capital Reserve. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, moving on to 7.8. Mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please. Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin. So I'll go to Director Radigan to start with the follow-up to the report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to members of council. So the purpose of this report before you is to provide further detail and analysis of the township's current fleet and associated costing in comparison to the enterprise fleet management proposal. Enterprise presented to council on 2 separate occasions, outlining the fleet management approach as well as their proposed synopsis with regards to the township's existing 38 light-duty vehicles. Although the procurement for this offering was completed through Sourcewell, LAS partnered with them to offer these contracts in Ontario, and in doing so, have evaluated the contract before adding it to their program to ensure it's ready for the Canadian market. The transition to a formal corporate fleet lease maintenance and management program has several benefits that include both financial and non-financial aspects. The financial analysis was prepared using assumptions to provide a comparable analysis of that provided by Enterprise. Staff assumed that all 38 vehicles would be replaced in 1 year, resulting in a total 10-year cost of approximately $5.4 million. This includes items such as the purchase and resale of a vehicle, preventative maintenance, fuel costs, and estimated costs of downtime, administration time, and additional costs as a result of outsourcing, repairs, and maintenance. This analysis was then used to compare to the average cost of leasing 38 vehicles over a period of 10 years based on the information provided by Enterprise. Now note, this is not a typical rental or a typical lease. It is an open-ended equity lease, which means any vehicle that would be sold, the funds coming back would be apportioned, and the cost of the vehicle would then be repaid, but any equity made on top of that would be 100% the township's. And that's how there is such a savings. So the report before you does identify a reduction of almost 8% over a period of 10 years, which almost equates to about $45,000 annually. Now I understand realistically, we would never need to replace 38 vehicles in 1 year. However, the report does identify that almost 55% of the township's existing light-duty fleet is currently 7 years or older. 9 of those vehicles are 10 years or older, and 12 of those vehicles are between the ages of 7 to 9. And as a result, we will see potential increase in capital costs and or repairs and additional maintenance costs as a result of our aging fleet. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay, thank you, Director Radigan. Go to Councillor Hanna.
Thank you. And Director Radigan, I apologize if it sounds like I'm questioning you. I'm questioning the figures probably that were submitted by Enterprise. And again, I'm sorry, I have to go by my notes because on this old other laptop, I can't open any reports tonight. So I'm looking at pages, I'm sorry. Hold on here. If we go to page 7 and table 1 on page 9, sorry. Page 7 is equity. I think you answered that question. So if we go to page 9, table 1. And in their report there, they talk about tires for the current vehicles we own, and at $1,500 per vehicle, and it comes out to $171,000 over the 10 years. But when we look at their table for their leased vehicles, it doesn't show any expenses for tires. And if you look at the batteries, if you like, we got them down here. For our vehicles that we currently own, it shows $400 over the life cycle of 10 years for our batteries, which is $15,200. Firstly, I would state I've had a number of trucks that have never had to replace a battery yet, and I've had some as long as 10 years. I have a car right now that's 42 years old. The batteries in it will be 10 years next month, and it's still working fine. So for them to be suggesting we're going to have to replace batteries in our vehicles that cost us $400 for those vehicles, it comes another $15,200 that then they're also using as figures to make our vehicles, if you look, like they're going to be more expensive. And the other one that really surprised me was the difference in fuel. They show for our vehicles the cost of fuel as $3,850 per vehicle, or $1,463,000 over the life cycle of 10 years. But for their vehicles, they show only $107,540, $356,000 difference for gas in enterprise vehicles versus Springwater vehicles. So those are some of the questions I had. And I didn't know if you would be able to comment or explain what the heck they're all about, because the difference is significant to me, and it misleading if I'm interpreting it correctly.
Thank you, Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you to Councillor Hannah. So I will start with the question about, we could start with the battery. So table 1 and table 2, they are comparisons completed in-house by staff, vetted through Manager Haw as well as Manager Anderson. So we made the assumption, if we were to own a vehicle for 10 years, how many times would we have to change the battery? And how often would we, let's say, how many sets of tires would we need for the potential 200,000 to 300,000? Let's say 300,000 is what we assumed the vehicle for kilometers wise. We assumed, so you have to realize some of these are assumptions. We made an assumption that one vehicle would at least have one battery replacement in its life cycle. So take that, multiplied it by 38 vehicles. Same went for the tires. We assumed each vehicle would go through 3 sets of tires in the 300,000 kilometers that they would be driven in the 10 years. Now, these separate costs you would not see in the equation that's provided by Enterprise, because what they do is they actually charge a management fee and an admin fee for our vehicles. So that's incorporated within it. And we wouldn't have maintenance costs for the tires or the batteries, because vehicles would not be kept for longer than 2 to 5 years. So the idea would be to rotate the vehicles on almost an annual basis based on what Enterprise calls their sweet spot. And in addition to that, I believe you did have another question, Councillor Hannah, with regards to the fuel. Table 1 shows fuel based on an average of what we have spent to date on 10 of our existing public works vehicles. So that is based on existing data that we have spent. The older the vehicles get, the less fuel efficient they become. And the cost that's been provided by Enterprise, that is based on $1.20 per liter, which is not the pump rate, but it is actually the rate that we are estimated on paying. That's the rack price, which Manager Hawk could speak further to if necessary. So as vehicles, the newer the vehicles are, we would not be spending as much on fuel costs. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Hannah.
Manager Haw, anything further to add before I go back to Councillor Hannah?
Yeah, just on the fuel price, yeah, we pay rack price. So certainly a little better than the pump price. And the price or the dollar value that Director Radigan provided was based on actual data from our fuel system.
Okay, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll continue with a couple of responses if I'm allowed. The fuel is not going to be that much difference in my mind, and I don't think anybody would suggest it's going to be $356,000 more to fuel up spring water vehicles versus enterprise vehicles. But I appreciate your explanation. The idea that they're going to turn their vehicles over every 3 years, there's options before we buy into this and commit our taxpayers to this binding leasing agreement. In my mind, there's options we could consider. We could consider replacing our vehicles when we buy them. As you know, the bumper to bumper is generally 3 years warranty, powertrain 5 years warranty. During that 3 to 5 years, we could do the same as enterprise and look at recycling our vehicles as well, and probably save a lot of administrative costs and so on. The other issue I have with this is such a serious decision. We're going to be putting our residents into a binding leasing agreement, and it's going to be very difficult to get out of it. If we're at the end of this, with the limited equity we would have, it would cost us probably $1 million to go and replace our fleet, because if we get out of this, we're going to have to replace the vehicles at the expense of our taxpayers. And just a couple other comments, if I could, Mayor, while I've got the floor. This is an important issue. If we're going to do this, I think it's important that we should be considering sole sourcing. I don't think we should just take the first offer, if you like, that's come along. And as I mentioned, there's other options we should be looking at. Instead of maybe buying our vehicles, I know when you pay cash for a vehicle and you buy it, you save a bit of money. But there are packages out there where you don't have to put anything down and pay any interest for 5 years. So before we just decide, well, leasing is a good idea, I just think there's other things we should be considering out, because I really have some concerns about this. When we talk about trade-in, I don't know if anybody's looked at their leasing agreement, but generally people lease vehicles, and I'm familiar with some people that have, and they go to take them back, and their costs for minor scratches, damage, tears to upholstery are significant. So I just think those are all the other things that maybe other people are aware of, and they have the answers, but I don't. So I would have a lot of difficulty supporting this without more information or supporting it at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Councillor Hannah, I just wanted to respond to a few of your comments. I did want to clarify the agreement with Enterprise would be an open-ended equity lease agreement. So there are no penalties, and there is no length of time that we would be required to be part of the program. And in addition to that, the equity basis is based on they would sell the vehicles, and any equity in addition to what they paid for that vehicle would then be returned to the township. And so that's where it's not necessarily a typical lease. It is an open-ended equity lease, which is something that is not commonly provided by most organizations. LAS has gone through a rigorous process. So they've done the tendering. They've put the administrative work into it to determine the best value for municipalities.
Thank you for that. And if I may, and this will be my last comment, Mayor, thank you. Again, as the way I see it, though, at the end of this, we might be able to get out of it and save our taxpayers being burdened by it, but we still wouldn't have any vehicles in our fleet that we own. Yes, we would get some money back from the ones they want to go and trade in, but then we got to pay the difference to replace the fleet, which I think would be significant, and that concerns me deeply. But those are my thoughts. I just think that we need to take a good look at this, look at other options. There's no rush to do this, and make sure we comply with the need, I believe, to outsource this to other potential companies that might want to service us.
Thank you, Councillor. Director Radigan, review the exit provisions and if for some reason we wanted to stop this agreement, if we entered into it, what would be the course back to purchasing and owning vehicles, our own vehicles?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Allen. I believe that would be entirely up to us how we would like to exit. Based on my understanding, we could do all 38 vehicles into the program. And if we decide we don't want to be in the program, we could slowly exit the program a few vehicles a time to get back to owning our vehicles.
So if we had the vehicles, would there be a predefined provision for purchasing those vehicles at a net book value or the equivalent?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I believe that is something that we can easily write into the agreement. It would be something that we would have to further discuss with Enterprise.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I do have concerns. I think everybody knows that. I was not a proponent of leasing from the very beginning. Going on the government website, Canada website, they say if you can purchase, not lease. As far as this equity piece is concerned, I think we should all understand that Enterprise is saying there's no buyout at the end because they don't want to give us that figure. What they're going to do is they're going to sell the truck or the car for whatever they can get. And if the car would have been a buyout of $10,000 and all they get is $5,000, the township's going to eat the difference, okay? Not Enterprise. And when it comes to the end of this lease, since there is no buyout option, they will be making us pay whatever they paid for the vehicle at the very beginning, in addition to whatever else they might want to put onto the end. So being able to say that it's an open lease and we can get out, that's a nice way of saying, give us 20 of your vehicles now so we can get you on board. And then we'll give you all 38. And then if you want to get out of it down the road, go ahead, but you'll be in it for years. So if we turn around and we don't like what Enterprise Fleet Management is doing for us, it'll still be years for us to get out, or a huge lump sum payment. So I don't see at the end of this how Springwater Township would benefit at all. And when I listened to what Mr. Bradley said, and I remember distinctly Enterprise was telling us that they were buying directly from the manufacturer. Well, that can't be so, because I also know that they can't buy from Ford, that they have to go to a Ford dealership. So how often do they go there? And then Mr. Bradley said in his email that not only that we would get, Enterprise gets $1,500 off of a particular vehicle, that the one that he said he did, but he said a government purchase, one that we would make, we would actually get an additional $1,500 off. So that means on every vehicle that Enterprise is going to give us is a $3,000 right there. Well, let's multiply that by 40. And even when we talked about the tires and the maintenance and all this stuff, what I want to point out is our fleet right now is ours. We don't owe a penny on it. At the end of this month, there's no payment for the lease for our vehicles. And I'd also like to stress that when our vehicles do get old and Manager Ha says, listen, we got a couple of vehicles here. They're well past their best before date. Let's unload them. That's what we do. And I also think it might be a bit misleading to say that because a vehicle is 10 years old, that there's no value in it. The truth of the matter is that if you've kept a vehicle for 10 years, you've got every ounce of usefulness out of that vehicle. And if all you do is drive her to the scrapyard, you're still ahead of any kind of lease payment anybody could ever give you. So I do struggle, especially since Enterprise is providing us with their figures. I don't know where they get their mileage numbers from. It could be right from the sheet that the manufacturers put on there. But I do want to say it's a little bit more misleading, and I'm going to take a little bit of time, because when we talked about the mechanic here, we hired a mechanic to assist with the small fleet vehicles, and now we're justifying Enterprise by trying to say that our small vehicle mechanic you know, has other things to do. So we're going to be outsourcing all that work again. We just hired this guy a year or so ago. So I don't see a corresponding reduction in the amount of money that it's costing us for the vehicles, because really, when you think about it, if that's what we hired that individual for, and we're going to be outsourcing these light duty vehicles, that position is redundant. And that's $100,000 a year. And when we talk about tires, we're getting 60, 70, 80,000 out of a tire. But I can tell you some of the vehicles that are in our fleet that have been around for a while and served us quite well are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old and in pretty good shape. And that's why we've held on to them. They're not costing us any money moving forward. And in the 11th year of this projection, we're going to pay the entire shot to Enterprise. Yet all we might have had to do is buy another couple of vehicles, and that would be all we would pay for in the 11th year. We will have no assets whatsoever. And the only reason I think this tastes so exciting and we have an appetite for it is because Enterprise basically said, we're going to get rid of your 19 vehicles and we're going to give you $100,000 and some odd for it. Well, those vehicles aren't costing us any money to utilize right now. So why would we give them up so that they can reduce the cost for us in their grand scheme? And at the end of it all too, like I say, when they say you've got the equity in it, our vehicles, when these guys are using them, are not always being cared for the way we'd expect. And if Enterprise is trying to tell us that they're going to take a vehicle that's 4 years old with scratches, dents in it, maybe a crack in the windshield, flaked paint, damaged bumpers, and then they're going to take whatever they get for it. And the reason they said they don't care is because they don't care. Because if they don't get their money out of it, they're just going to simply add it to the lease going forwards, because they're not going to lose a penny. I'm sorry, Mayor Allen, I think I get 10 minutes. So I'm not quite done. I mean, I've got a lot to say about it, but I do question, even when we're talking about catastrophic failures, and we took 10% of the cost for the vehicles and put that in the slot for us making the purchase. But at the end of the day, if we've got a vehicle of theirs for 4 years and somebody forgets to put the oil in it, it's going to be a catastrophic failure that we're still going to be on the hook for. And I'd like to know how many of our vehicles have had those types of catastrophic failures. And even aside of that, I think we are hard pressed, and I really want to caution, based on the fact, Mr. Bradley's email, that moving forward with this as a single source, and it's great that LES put this together, they gave us the framework. This contract is ours. It's not like we're just simply getting a contract from LAS and moving forward. This is a multi-million-dollar contract that's going to commit us for a number of years, and our procurement policy doesn't permit it. And I don't think we should move forward with it. If we do, it should be done through an RFP, and other people who provide the same services should be able to bid on it as well. And I think we could be criticized severely for moving forward without doing that. So I'm just cautious. Maybe everybody thinks we should lease. I'm just saying maybe we shouldn't jump on board with Enterprise. And I know council can decide to go forward on a single source, but I would suggest to you that that should be a unique product that can't be sourced, or a unique service that can't be sourced elsewhere. Those are my points, and I won't support this.
Okay, Director Radigan, do you want to comment on those numbers of points?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Councillor Cabral. We did do extensive research based on our existing fleet and brought forward viable solutions. So I do believe that what we have brought forward is viable, and there is potential for savings. Based on my understanding, LAS has gone through a rigorous process based on due diligence. They have done the procurement, and it's not a sole source. It has been awarded to Enterprise, and that's why I would say the procurement has been approved via LAS, who has been mandated by AMO to work with municipalities. I'm not sure if I have any other comments. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cabral, let me hear from Councillor Moore. I haven't heard from you yet.
Sure.
this
I
topic.
apologize, Mayor Allen.
Go ahead,
Thank you,
Councillor.
Mayor Allen. Yes, I just wanted some clarification, if I could, on the procurement process, and that we aren't doing something that Councillor Cabral has mentioned would be looked on as, in a negative way. So could somebody or the CAO speak to that, please?
Okay, CAO Schmidt, you're the procurement expert.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Moore. So in my understanding and what I've done in the past is that, so it's called piggybacking in some cases. So we've had, when I was in the N6, so in Township of King, we had a number of procurement opportunities whereby a municipality would go out and do the full-blown RFP, go through the evaluation process, and provide for a piggyback clause within their procurement document, which essentially allowed for any other municipalities in the N6, the northern 6 municipalities of York Region, to essentially jump on board and to negotiate a contract with whoever that successful bidder was. So I see this as being the same thing. Essentially, to Director Radigan's comments, LAS has essentially done all of the administrative work to go out and procure or put out a document for this type of work, and have done all the legwork for us. And that's what LAS really does. That's the service that they provide, so that staff doesn't, and municipalities don't have to spend the administrative time going through issuing an RFP and evaluating, which can take 2, 3, 4, 5 months, depending on what we're talking about. So there's time and there's money saved there in abiding or adopting this process. So I would say that, we have done sole sourcing, we've done single sourcing. Our procurement bylaw does provide for it. It's really up to council to decide whether or not they agree with it. And if you don't, again, I think what Director Radigan is saying is that, again, we're here to provide an opportunity for the township. We feel that we've done the analysis that's required, and we feel that there is a benefit to moving to this program. I would say that, if council is not supportive of going forward with the full 38 vehicles, there is an option to potentially explore with the enterprise that maybe we pilot 10 of our vehicles and see whether or not the program works for us. But right now, tonight, what's being proposed is the full 38 vehicles. But again, I think they would be open to looking at a pilot program, so that, again, council could get maybe a better sense of whether or not this program is going to produce the results that they're saying, and might give you a little bit more comfort, I guess, if you will, as to whether or not this is something we want to go full bore with or not. So I'll leave it at that.
Follow on, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. And thank you, CAO Schmidt. I can appreciate the efficiencies by having the central procurement model, because it does make a lot of sense. And I would probably support a pilot project. I think that I would like to see that we move forward, maybe with our older vehicles, however many that is that you feel appropriate, 10 or 15, and work with enterprise for a year or so and see how the process goes, and see if their management style is one that we can work with. And it does give us an out, hopefully, at the end. If at the end of that year we don't like what we're receiving in service or vehicle communications, then we can back out.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, it's significant contract, significant dollars. I think there've been good points raised tonight. So I would suggest that Director Radigan get further information, further answers with respect to these reports or these points, and that we do consider a pilot program, but we also need a strict definition of how we could extricate ourselves from whatever we decide to do and get back onto the route of owning whatever number of vehicles that we decide to pilot with. But I think that would be best, because the Clearviews and the Meafords that are around us who've tried this are new in the game. So they really haven't gone through a full cycle. We can't get really valuable input from them because they haven't been involved in it long enough. So I think instead of torpedoing this completely, we go back, get more factual information, get more details on what I just said, and then reconsider it as a council, or consider it as a council. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just wanted to point out that I get LAS and I get what they do. However, there's so many variables with this particular leasing of vehicles that whatever they may have taken as far as the framework is concerned would not be applicable to every single municipality unless we were all buying the exact same vehicle and we knew how much it was for that vehicle each month. Yeah, then it might not be a big deal. But that's not the case. These leases are tailored to each municipality. And LAS might be promoting it or might be giving it their blessing and saying, go ahead, enterprise. It looks like you've got all this stuff covered. But I don't think that relieves us of an obligation to look at procurement and an RFP from other providers that provide exactly the same service, especially when we may very well have local providers here that could lease us vehicles and also provide a maintenance package along with that lease. And I think we should be exploring that as well. As Councillor Moore has stated, for a pilot project, I don't think we should merely put all our eggs into the enterprise basket, especially when we know that they're actually paying more money for the vehicles than we can get locally from like dealer here with the incentives that the manufacturers are providing. So if we're going to do 10 vehicles, let's look at maybe not even 10. Let's start with 5, but let's look locally too and see whether or not we can accommodate it in the same fashion, better on our terms. So that's my thoughts on that. I just wanted
It's a
to
basic lease versus buy analysis. So it needs to be done, but done in a way that doesn't commit us as substantially as this would initially. Councillor Ritchie, I believe you had your card up, and then Deputy Mayor.
Short answer, I'm having trouble with this whole lease thing. I think we just, we step back to with the front end loader. There's a machine that we've owned for a number of years. We've maintained it. We've looked after it. We're trading it in. We owned it. We're trading it in. We're getting good residual value. We don't do that with a lease. Having said that, this whole exercise makes me want to say, maybe we need to take a closer look at how we handle our fleet. I'm not saying that leasing is the way to go. What I'd like to see is should we be trading them in after 100,000? Like, I mean, if we're doing less than 20,000 a year, that's 5 years. That's 100,000 kilometers. Well, 100,000 kilometers on a pickup truck, there's still good residual trade-in value there. And let's keep in mind, these lease companies are running on the warranty of these vehicles. We could do the same thing ourselves. Is it 100 or 150,000 kilometers bumper to bumper? We have the infrastructure in place with mechanics. If we need a battery, we need a tire, we need any of this stuff to get us up and get us running, especially in the winter months when it's so critical out. So I think this whole exercise, again, I'm repeating myself, is for us to really take a look at this. Maybe we should be trading them in every 4 years, every 5 years, and whether it be a GM, a Ford, a Dodge, whatever the case may be, at least we're trading in, at least we've got residual value. If we trade a vehicle in and we get 30,000 for it, and we pay 50,000 for a new one, well, we're back up and running with all the warranty that we've got, and we've got good vehicles in our staff. So I think this whole exercise is worth taking a little closer look at. But for now, I ain't going to support this. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ma.
I think Deputy Mayor was before me, Mayor Allen.
Oh, sorry. Deputy Mayor, did you have your card up again?
Yes. Yes, I did. Thank you. Thank you, Marilyn. And through you, I think I was just wanting to add my comments in that when this program first came forward, I was very reluctant to even take a good hard look at it because leasing has always been something that was never considered in my personal life. It was always, you were taught to own your own vehicles and live within your means. In saying that, in talking to people within our private business communities and municipality of Clearview, and without a director of public works at this time, speaking with past directors and current staff, I had also learned that the Township of Springwater has recently, or sorry, in the past had a leasing agreement on our larger, I believe it was through CAT, and in Win Ann's time, I believe. And I'm just curious if this is coming back to council, if we can maybe inquire as to how the information was that our Springwater at the time took on that partnership and why they got out of it. That would be beneficial to myself. But in speaking with past staff, current staff, and our business communities, I have learned that this is common practice today. So I am supportive of this, and I do like Councillor Moore's suggestion of maybe tailoring it down to something that is more of the appetite and maybe not so overwhelming to the decision today. So I'm happy to forward it back to staff.
Thank you. Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I was just going to say maybe support what Councilor Moore said and do a pilot project. Take 10 or 12 cars that are 8 to 10 years old and look at that way. I do support it, but with all council, maybe we'll just pilot and see how it is for the first year and go with that. At least it's a little foot in the door and see how that is.
Thank you. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just wanted to point out that the main difference between a municipality and a business entity is business entities, they require cash flow. So they got, cash flow issues to deal with. So that's one of the reasons why they lease. Also, leasing for them is a business. They're in the business of making money. So the leasing is an expense to give them the cash flow too, I would suggest. We don't generate cash flow as a township. Leasing or purchasing is strictly a liability for the township. The only difference, I think, with purchasing is we have the equity in those vehicles. Those assets are ours.
Okay, Clerk Ainsworth, do you have wording for a potential amendment?
I do. I have included several comments that have been stated over the last piece of the discussion. So please let me know if something should be removed or added. It would read that the motion now before council be referred to staff to seek further information based on council's discussion, including a possible RFP process, as well as a proposal for a possible pilot program with enterprise fleet management.
Okay, comments on that? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would just like to suggest that even if it's a pilot project, that we reach out to our local dealerships and see what kind of numbers they might be able to provide. I think if it's a competitive thing, then we should explore the options that are best for the township and the taxpayers to make sure that we're getting the best deal, whether it's 5 cars or 40 cars. So I would like to see that it's not specifically with enterprise, that maybe we explore a pilot project, a pilot leasing project, but leave enterprise out as far as—
You made reference, Clerk Ainsworth, to an RFP process. What was that wording on that, please?
Mayor Allen, it would be to seek further information based on council's discussion, including a possible RFP process, as well as the pilot with enterprise fleet management.
So does that fit with what you're suggesting, Councillor Cabral?
Well, actually, it's two different things. If they put out an RFP, I would assume that the RFP would be for the entire package as enterprise fleet management has proposed. So if we go with
No, let me stop you there. We could define the terms of the RFP, so we could tailor it to a pilot amount.
Oh, then if that's what we're planning on doing, Mayor Allen, I would suggest that the second portion that talks about a pilot be removed, if that's how we're going to handle the RFP. I was just suggesting if the staff explores an RFP for the entire thing as Enterprise Fleet Management has provided to us now, that's one thing. Part B is whether or not we move forward with a little, kind of like a test pilot project with, say, 5 to 10 vehicles. If we do that, I don't think it should be strictly limited to exploring that with Enterprise Fleet Management. I think we should also reach out to some of the local people and ask them if they'd like an opportunity to give us numbers.
So basically, Clerk Ainsworth, we need to incorporate something that allows for consideration of a pilot and allows for not single sourcing, but going out to explore competitive sourcing.
That's good.
Councillor Hannah, then Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you. And I just want to say this has been a good discussion. I would just ask the consideration for the clerk to remove the word possible from the RFP.
Okay, Councillor Ritchie and then Deputy Mayor.
Two things. Are we obligating ourselves to this request for purchase, or they're just going to bring it back for further information?
No, we're not obligating us. It's going to be coming back for further discussion and decision.
Second question. Is there some kind of, maybe Scott or any of them would know, can we refer this or reach out to a consultant or somebody at one of the dealerships or just somebody independent to kind of say, this is what you're looking at? I'm just throwing it out there to kind of help us decide going forward. I just, if there was somebody out there that could kind of help us get down, a little more granular, but I still think this whole process going forward would help us look at dealing them in sooner and having the equity in them to trade up. And I think that approach is still very viable given the infrastructure that we have. Thank you.
Well, I think that the RFP process, whatever we decide on the finalization of that, would get feedback from the people who proposed on it as to what the best approach would be, or what the differing approaches would be.
Well said.
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. I've amended the wording slightly. Please let me know if we require any further changes. So that the motion now before council be referred to staff to seek further information based on council's discussion, including a possible RFP process, as well as a proposal for a pilot program with Enterprise Fleet Management in comparison with a lease program with a local dealership or dealerships. Does that cover everybody's concerns?
Yes, I'll just go to Councillor Hannah, but before I go, Director Radigan, there've been a lot of points brought up tonight that I think require further follow-up with Enterprise, a lot of questions and clarifications. So no doubt you've taken good note of those, and we'll be able to follow up to get more information and answers with respect to that. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, and thank you to the clerk. I know we're not an easy bunch to try to follow, but appreciate it. But again, the word possible for the RFP, I would appreciate if council will support not having that in there, because possible means it may not happen. Thank you.
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I can remove that word, but the referral just requests that a report come back to council with that. So it wouldn't authorizing or passing this motion wouldn't set council on having an RFP. It wouldn't be the final determination.
We're getting more information on it before deciding, Councillor Hannah. Deputy Mayor.
My apologies, Mayor Allen, through you. The word possible, there's been a couple times with council that we found ourselves in a binding contract through the RFP process. So I think that having the word possible there allows us the opportunity to move forward in that direction or not. So I just want to make sure that we are not moving forward with an RFP that we're going to find ourselves bound to.
Okay, is everybody clear on the motion? Do we have a mover and seconder for this?
Mayor Allen, we do require a mover and seconder for the referral.
Councillor Moore and Councillor Cabral. All those in favor? Any opposed? No opposed. That is carried. Thank you. Good discussion. Okay, moving on to 8.1, information reports. There are 3 information reports. Mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please. Councillor Ma, Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Any questions with respect to these? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. With your indulgence, I did have a question with respect to the bylaw activity report.
Okay, go ahead.
My question regarding it has to do with the ORVs and the number attributed there, both dirt bikes and I just wanted to know if there's any kind of sense these particular numbers, ATV 44, dirt bikes 22. I just want to get a sense whether or not these are individual complaints or whether they're being generated by the same individuals over and over again. I just kind of want to get a sense of how they're coming in. 44 individual complaints or one person making 44 complaints.
Supervisor Killington.
Mayor Allen, she is not on the call this evening, but there are some complaints that have come from individuals, but there is a large portion that are coming from the same individuals.
The same individual or individuals?
There are a couple of different areas in the township that complaints do come from. So it's not specifically from one individual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mayor Allen, would it be okay if possible, if bylaw officer Kellington might be able to provide that information through an email to me? I'd just be interested in finding out how many are actually like new complaints versus ones that are being generated over and over again by the same people.
Follow up that with her, Clerk Ainsworth, please.
Yes, thank you. We can provide that information to council, definitely.
Okay. Any other comments with respect to these information reports? Okay, we have mover and seconder that the report items listed herein be received as information. CP Rail Gate installation on North Simcoe Rail Trail, the Ministerial Delegation's AMO Conference, and bylaw activity report, April 2021. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to 9, verbal reports, 9.1 and 9.2. Official plan update, economic development update. Director Spagnell, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a couple of things to report. Staff is preparing a report for council's consideration for a special council meeting on May the 31st regarding the county's MCR process. In addition to that, on that same night, there will also be a public meeting to deal with the official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments for cannabis production facilities in the township. In addition to that, as per council's direction, staff will also be meeting with the Agricultural Advisory Committee on May 26th to go over some of the comments from that group. And in addition, from an economic development perspective, there is work being conducted by staff with the farmers market in Elmville to start setting up shop for a market in June. Staff will be assisting with logistics of the market, which is expected to start on Friday, June 18th and continue on through until September. I'm available to answer any questions that the council has. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie.
Yes, Mayor Allen, in regards to economic development updates, I'd just like to mention the Shiny Bud Cannabis Company just opened up today, 29A Queen Street West. And how I know is they're right beside us. So when I came in tonight, I seen their sign open. So they're open for business. And if anybody's feeling a little blue, you know where to go. They're open. You got any aches or pains? I guess they're the place to go. So the Shiny Bud Cannabis Company, they're open. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Director Spagnol? Okay, moving on to the Midhurst Development Update. CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I have no updates from the Midhurst development this evening. Things are just continuing as is and nothing further to provide at this stage.
Okay, and I know you've been very busy today, so anything with respect to COVID you want to mention?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so just quickly, as most are aware, the declaration of the emergency and the provincial stay-at-home order have been extended to June 2nd. So all township facilities do remain closed to the public. And again, staff are available to provide assistance by phone and email. From a vaccine perspective, approximately 277,000 doses have been administered in Simcoe Muskoka, of which approximately 258,000 have received their first dose, which represents just about 42.7% of our population. In addition, about 24,000 have received both doses, which represents about 4% of our population. As of yesterday, anyone turning 18 years of age or older in 2021 are now eligible to book their dose, their appointments. And I would encourage everybody, if they can, go out and book your appointment. The health unit is also currently working with the school board, their school board partners, the plan for the local implementation of the provincial vaccination of youth aged 12 to 17. And it's my understanding that it's anticipated to take place the week of June 14th and 21st, and further information is to be provided regarding that. As of yesterday, Springwater has had 261 confirmed cases of COVID, which is approximately an increase of 8 cases since my last update on May 5th. And we have, of those 261, 238 have recovered, none are in hospital, and again, 2 have passed. So that concludes my update this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions with regard to that? Moving on to 9.5 county updates, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. There is nothing to update on. It was actually probably a record timing for the meeting. It was quite quick.
Yes. 9.6 municipal updates. Any municipal updates? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. Just an observation, because I don't believe everybody has copied on the complaints about speeding in the Midhurst area, particular today. The CEO probably can look it up on his computer, but I can't with the Zoom going on. But I would say there was more than a half a dozen today alone complaints about speeding in Midhurst. I'm just wondering if we can do something to expedite getting these speed monitors. These complaints are taking place to try to show support for the residents that we are concerned and trying to do whatever we can based on our resources.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I'm meeting with staff tomorrow morning to discuss a plan. And once we have that, we'll notify council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just want to comment there, the report that staff brought forward, I guess was the bylaw department, about the number of inspections that they did with the off-road ATVs. And for the number of inspections that they did, there was only like 3 where they were reprimanded. So, you know, I see them on my concession road all the time, but they're, you know, they're abiding to the law. And I, you know, like when you look at the number of inspections and what was, you know, reprimanded, like it was very minimal. So I'm quite pleased to see that. As far as that's what I'm trying to say. Thanks. a good thing.
Thank you. Was there another card up there that I missed? Councillor Ma?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just want to echo what Councillor Hannah said about the speeding. I've had a few complaints on Bush One County Road and Ronald Road on the other side of George Johnson on the west side. So if something can go out, that would be awesome. And secondly, Aunt Mills is preparing their 50th anniversary. Hopefully COVID lifts by October. And so they're looking for anyone that has perennial plants. So you can reach out to Dennis Gannon if you have anything that you would like to donate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cabral? You're muted.
Thank you. I just wanted to actually thank Public Works. I know Manager Ha has been trying to get the radar boards up and running. And a little while back, I noticed one on County Road 92 coming into Elmvale. It was there for a period of time. I don't know if it's still there now, but I have seen them, and I just wanted to say thanks for having them deployed. I hope they're working out great and we can get some more.
Thank you. Okay, no further updates, municipal updates. Item number 10, notices of motion. Any notices of motion? Item 11 is items for future consideration. And item 12.1 is bylaws. Mover and seconder for approval of bylaws. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Ma, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. 2021-51 final tax levy bylaw, 2021-55 records retention bylaw. All those in favor? Is carried. Mover and seconder for confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Cabral and Councillor Moore, that bylaw 2021-056 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on May 19th, 2021, listed herein be signed and sealed with the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? It is carried. And mover and seconder for adjournment, please. Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Hannah, that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater is now adjourned at 8:36 p.m. to meet again. Regular meeting June 2nd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. And now Clerk Ainsworth, there's another meeting following this.
Yes, there is a special meeting immediately following this. You would have received the connection details at around 7:30. They're separate connection details from this meeting, and it'll take staff about 10 minutes to set it up. So if we could have a start time for that meeting of 8:50, that would be appreciated.
So 10 to 9. Tune back in with the connection that we were emailed. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, it would have came in at around 7:30.
Okay, thank you.